John, who you got for your waiver wire targets?
All right. So this week we have three different quarterback options. Uh, one is more of a potential long-term season one, and the other two are streaming options. First up, Cam Newton from the Carolina Panthers. He's back, like you said. And I think the differentiator for him is that he has the ability to run, especially in the red zone, and that just bodes well for fantasy points. And then ultimately, I think that Carolina has the playmakers to make him relevant. Christian McCaffrey, with the underneath stuff. DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson are talented. Even Terrace Marshall Jr. has returned. So I think that Cam Newton, I'm not sold that he's necessarily going to be, a QB1 or anything. But if you're in a two quarterback league, he absolutely needs to be on a roster. And then if you're, in a deeper league where, 14, 12 teams and, maybe you have a Matthew Stafford, you have, a quarterback that's gotten hurt, boom, Cam Newton can be your guy. And I think that he's a sleeper for potentially providing some really good value over the next couple of weeks. Just with the running ability he does have. But for streaming options this week, if you do have a Matthew Stafford or for some reason Teddy Bridgewater is a quarterback, maybe once again two quarterback league, Justin Fields and Mac Jones, two rookies that have really started to hit their stride. For Mac Jones, we just saw what he was able to do against Cleveland. They play Atlanta next week. We saw what Dallas was able to do against Atlanta. We've seen other offenses have been able to, have success against that defense. Plain and simple, they're just not incredibly talented. And the way the Patriots play the ball, I think that they're going to have success against that defense. Not going to turn the ball over, ground and pound, allow Mac Jones to play off play action, short stuff, just do what he typically does and have success. So Mac Jones against Atlanta, and then Justin Fields against the Ravens this week. Plain and simple, the Ravens, like I said earlier, are allowing the most passing yards per game. And although I don't expect Justin Fields and the Bears to necessarily destroy them through the air, Justin has finished the last two games that he's played as a top 10 fantasy quarterback. And I think that's because he's starting to run the ball. He's averaging 65 rushing yards per game over those last two. And as we talked about, rushing yards for a quarterback, that's really good for fantasy. I mean, if he's getting 65 yards a game, that's about 6.5 points off of rushing yards right there for your fantasy QB. You add in the passing stuff, maybe a touchdown or two, and you're easily into the double digits and easily, approaching 20 points. So Justin Fields against the Ravens, who have just not looked impressive defensively, I would start him and Mac Jones as streamers if you have Matthew Stafford on bye. Moving on to running backs, only two this week. First up, Ramondre Stevenson from the Patriots. If Damian Harris is going to miss games, Ramondre Stevenson looks like he's going to be the guy, and they didn't miss a heartbeat. He had, I think, over 100 rushing yards on the ground this past week, a really solid performance. And I think the Patriots are just simply very high on him. I can't remember when it was, a few weeks ago, but I talked about how the running backs coach said that he wanted to make him become a bell cow. And when you do that, you're giving your running back a lot of opportunities. And in fantasy, that's what we want. So Ramondre Stevenson, I think he needs to be on teams at this point because of just the potential he has. Even if Damian Harris does play, Stevenson has been getting involved in the past. And then Donta Foreman from the Tennessee Titans, kind of alluded to it last episode. I can't remember exactly what I said when talking about the Titans, but when we were reacting to their game against the Rams, he was the most impressive out of the three running backs. Adrian Peterson did get the touchdown, but Foreman had the more efficient day, and that continued in this game. I think I don't know the touch numbers in the game against the Saints. I'm going to pull it up, but he had a really solid fantasy performance. Wasn't anything crazy, but it's what you want. He had 11 carries for 30 yards, and receiving wise, he had two receptions for 48 yards. So if you're playing a PPR league, I think that's enough for almost double digits. And so if you need a Titans running back or you're in a desperate situation like me to where if Damian Harris is out, you have literally nobody else, Donta Foreman can be that guy for you because it seems like he's the most efficient of all of the Titans running backs so far. And he had the most carries this past week. Moving on to wide receiver, Marcus Johnson from the Tennessee Titans. AJ Brown, I mean, obviously he's solid, but also Julio Jones placed on IR. He's going to miss the next two games at least. Marcus Johnson, he stepped up big in this one. He had 5 catches for 100 yards against the Saints. And so I would just say that in the absence of Julio Jones, I would add him if you need a wide receiver because they're gonna put all their attention on AJ Brown. They're like, who's this Marcus Johnson guy? Well, he stepped up big when Ryan Tannehill needed him to in this one, and he showed the ability to make some deep plays. He had a 50-yard catch, so 6 targets, 5 catches, 100 yards. He looks solid in this one as well. So I would add him. Elijah Moore over the last 3 weeks, I think I saw that he has finished as the wide receiver number 7 over the last 3 games. He's just been downright impressive. He's getting involved in the game plan, and I think that he just at this point has to be on rosters. He's starting to take over the snap count, especially from Jamison Crowder when it comes to stuff in the slot. And so, there's still Corey Davis as the wide receiver 1 there, but Elijah Moore, I was really high on him out of the draft. I was really high on him even before the fantasy season. He's starting to provide that value to where he could even be in your fantasy starting lineups. And over the last 2 weeks, if he was, that he's been balling out. So I'm not sure I was not added in more leagues yet, but you got to add him. And the final wide receiver, Gabriel Davis from the Buffalo Bills. I know he's a guy that you're really high on. Plain and simple, he outsnapped Cole Beasley by a lot last week. I think he had about 36 snaps to Beasley's 9. Now, Beasley has been dealing with injuries, and so I'm not entirely sure if that's maybe the reason why. If it's not, then this bodes well for Gabriel Davis because this means that he's just earning more playing time. But if it is due to injury, then you want to add him because it's a high-octane offense, a lot of passing stuff in that offense, and you want to be invested in offenses like that. And if Cole Beasley does miss time, it looks like Gabriel Davis is going to step up and be a really solid factor against this game, against the Jets. He had 3 catches for 105 yards, had a 49-yard reception. So, he caught all of his targets and was able to be a deep threat for them. So, Gabriel Davis, I would add him as well. Moving on to tight ends. First up, Tyler Conklin from the Minnesota Vikings. Plain and simply, the production's just there. He's finding targets in the red zone. I think he had 2 touchdowns in this game against the Chargers. So he's producing. And next week, the Vikings play. I like the matchup that they're having. They play the Packers, and so the Packers and the way their secondary has been playing, I think that it could be a tougher spot for Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson in the red zone. I know that Kevin King, even amidst the years where he struggled, one of his biggest strengths over the years has been the red zone. I think that's because he's tall, he's got long arms, and so it's harder to do these end zone fades against him. And so you get Tyler Conklin, you get to go against stuff up the middle, and they're going to divert the Packers are probably going to divert all their attention to Dalvin Cook and those receivers. Conklin can be a solid red zone option. And plus, Kirk Cousins has just been solid over the last couple of games and has been getting Conklin involved. So Tyler Conklin, if you need him, maybe you had Tyler Higbee or Noah Fant and you need a streaming option, pick him up. And then finally, Logan Thomas from the Washington football team. He was on here last week, but I don't think he was pulled off of IR yet. I'm going to put him on here until he is pretty much. I think he's owned in over 50% of leagues, but I'm still going to put him on there just because he's really talented and they get him involved a lot in the red zone as their main receiving option down there. So absolutely need Logan Thomas on rosters because just how thin the tight end position is and how touchdown dependent it is as well. Once you get past the elite guys, Logan Thomas, he gets involved when you need touchdowns. So those are the waiver wire pickups for week 11. If you got, more questions on who to pick up, starts and sits, trades, all that kind of stuff, follow us on Instagram. That's where we're most active and respond the most.
Yeah. So, that'll conclude this episode. Like John mentioned, our Instagram is at Shut Up and Ball Pod, and our Instagram, our Twitter and TikTok are at Shut Up and Ball. That was the handle, and then we have a Facebook page as well. Obviously, you can listen to us if you don't on pretty much every large podcast streaming service, Apple, Spotify, even like iHeartRadio. I do it to pretty much all of them. And then obviously YouTube as well. But that'll be it for us. We'll be back later in the week with our picks. Oh, I just had it too. Let me pull up the Thursday night spread so we can make that pick.
Thursday is Patriots, Falcons. I don't know the spread.
So New England favored by 7.5. They are undefeated away. I'm going with New England.
Yeah, I'll go with the Patriots too. Falcons just
their defense
3 points flat.
Yeah, and New England's defense is pretty good too.
Yeah, like I said, I was gonna say they put up 3 points against Dallas and Dan Quinn. I know that it was a little more emotional for Dan Quinn than it will be for Bill Belichick, but it's still Bill Belichick and that defense. And also, they're the kings of complimentary football. Mac Jones is not going to put the ball in harm's way, and also he's not going to
And their line's pretty
miss.
good. So
He's
run the
not going to
ball,
miss
too.
throws. Yeah. So
And only a short week to make adjustments. It's tough with not many weapons because I don't. That doesn't sound like Calvin. If Calvin really said, "Hey, I'm ready to come back," like we mentioned, practice, it's going to take him a week or two to be back in full 100% shape, like football shape.
Yeah.
In form. So, alrighty. So those are we both went Patriots for a Thursday nighter. And so yeah, you probably should too. Unless you're a betting person, then don't bet. Anyways, that'll be all, y'all. Have a nice one.